There are films that succeed, and then there are films that shift expectation. The difference is subtle but permanent because success is about performance, numbers, box office, popularity, but expectation changes what comes after. It changes what audiences demand, what filmmakers attempt, what an industry believes is possible. In 2018, King of Boys did something Nollywood had been circling for years, but had not fully committed to. It shows scale, not just in story, but in ambition, in tone, in visual language, in performance. And once that choice was made, there was no going back. Because after King of Boys, Nollywood could no longer pretend it didn't know how big it could look. I am Adeoluwa, and this is Losing the Plot. Welcome back, you guys. Welcome back. It's good to have you guys here. Another week, another hour-long researchful yap session. And as you've heard from the cold open and probably seen in the title, I am finally making good on my promise to talk about something other than music. So, yes, again, like I have always mentioned, I take this podcast platform very seriously. So I really want to make sure that when I'm here, I'm talking about things that I've researched well enough and things that I'm also passionate about talking about. So it has to be in that middle for me. I can't just come here and talk about something that I've never thought about before in my life or I don't find interesting. So it has to be like, okay, I find it interesting and I know some things about it, but also I need to research about it to make sure that my opinions and my thoughts about it are grounded in fact. And if you know me personally, for people that do know me personally, you know how much I can go on and on about King of Boys. The movie and as well the Netflix miniseries. So today's episode is just about the movie, the film, not about the TV series, which deserves its own yap session, honestly. But today I'm keeping it just about the movie because I remember watching it in the cinema. I remember the rollout for it. I was actually in Nigeria when it came out, and sometimes, and I don't mean to sound overly dramatic or whatever, but sometimes you really do feel like you're experiencing history happen, and that's how I felt watching King of. I was like this is. I feel like I'm in a moment. I feel like I'm watching something that's going to change things. I really did feel that when I was watching it back then, and I was right. I mean, it's not saying I was right. It wasn't a surprise or a shock. I think everybody that watched it and experienced it were like, this is different, this is going to change things. And so it was kind of this collective feeling of wow, from the characters to the story to the production to the scale to the length. I remember being like, this is a very long movie. When all of those things, they really contributed to my thinking. I think the collective thinking that there's going to be a before King of Boys and an after King of Boys. So we'll get into that a lot in today's episode. But I have to do my welcomes first. So if you're a repeat plotter, I think plotter was what I came up with last week. If you're a repeat plot, let's make it a crowned plotter. Is that too much? Is that too many words? Crowned plotter. I don't know. I'll see how that feels. If I repeat crowned plotter, which is like about listening to the podcast, losing the plots, plotter, stay crowned plotter. I think that works. Okay. If I repeat crowned plotter, welcome back to Losing the Plot. And if you're new here, welcome to Losing the Plot. And so far this first season, oh my god, this is what, episode 14? Crazy. So far this season, we've been expanding the conversation about structures and systems in popular culture and music. And I've been doing a lot of episodes about music that happens in the West, in the Americas. But I've been promising in all these episodes that I'm going to do something that's finally about film or just something different from music. And we've come to the moment, right? So this is me expanding the conversation beyond music into culture, into systems, into the decisions that help reshape industries. Because whether it's albums or films, the same question keeps appearing. What changes when ambition increases, right? So even if you go back to like previous episodes that are not about film, about movies, I've kind of detailed and chronicled how a singular person can change the way we do things forever. So we've talked about Brandy and how when Brandy came in, she changed what we expected from female pop vocalists, what we expected in terms of layers and stacking. And we talked about Michael Jackson with the music video, how when Michael Jackson came onto the scene, he changed how we think about, how artists should present, what a music video can be, how visuals intersect with film. And we talked about Madonna in the same light. So this is kind of just adding to that structure of one person can change how we do things forever. And one thing that whenever I talk about the power of a singular artist changing the art form of something, it again occurs to me how still very young humanity is as a concept. I know that sounds funny to say because obviously we have been around for thousands of years and whatever, but a lot of the things that we in this day and age take as how things are, how things should be, culture essentially, are still very recent inventions. I've talked about this when I was talking about the advent of the camera and the music video and the radio and headphones and all of those things. These are pretty recent. So a lot of the adjustments that we made in our culture or as a people to accommodate these inventions, they feel like they've been with us for longer than they actually have been. And I think, just to lose the plot for the first time in this, I guess, episode, is that I find that to be very encouraging because I think as an artist, as a musician, as just a creative, I like to create things, not just music, but as a creative, sometimes you can feel like everything has been done. Like everything has been done. Oh my God, there's so many artists on Spotify today. There's so many YouTubers. There's so many this and that, and you can think like, oh, everything has been done. But if you put it in the context of the fact that everything is still very recent, the internet is still very recent, social media is still very recent, influencer culture is still very recent. When you put it into that context, it allows you to think, actually, you know what? There's a space for me. There's a space for my voice. There's a space for what I want to do, how I want to do it, because you never know. Again, not every single whim and not every single artistic exploration that is so brazen and bold changes history or whatever. But it could be you. Like, why couldn't it be you? Because I think about all of the stories we talked about, and now talking about Kemi Adetiba today, who is a Nigerian female director. It just makes me think about that even more. That like, there were movies before King of Boys that were really great in Nollywood, obviously, but she went for something in specific and she really changed. Like, if you look at Nigerian films after King of Boys release, just in terms of topic, just in terms of what the story is about, there's more gangster, more noir, like there's more edgy content and scale and production that you can trace directly to the advent of King of Boys. So just to say that everything hasn't been done yet. There's a specific intersection of you and the art that you can make if you're an artist and someone that is creative, that you can make that we need, that we need for the lexicon of music and arts and culture and films and all these things to move forward. So it could be you just find that thing that is yours and you can do that. Okay, so that's my little soapbox preaching motivation thing for today. But let's get into it. Like, I'm really excited for this episode. Again, obviously, I love talking about music. I love talking about culture in general. Music is just the easiest, most, nearest conversational prompt for me to dive into. But King of Boys, I really, really adored the film so much. I don't know if I would call it a comfort watch, because I do have comfort watch. Like if I want to watch something for comfort that I know how it's going to play and all of that, I think I'll pick like The Devil Wears Prada, or what else would I pick? I think Devil Wears Prada is my favorite comfort watch. There's another movie that I really love to watch, but it's escaping me right now. Oh no, I can't remember. But that's a comfort watch for me. Like it's the tension in The Devil Wears Prada is okay. Like I can ease myself through it. I'm very familiar with the lexicon of the movie and whatever. But King of Boys, like I wouldn't call it a comfort watch, but I would call it like an inspirational watch. Like if I want to go back and watch something to kind of ignite my artistic sensibilities, like if I want to watch something that to prove to myself that anything I want to do is possible, especially like in this past couple of months where I've been, doing a lot of like rejigging of how I want to proceed with how I make music and how I create and all of those things, and I've been kind of been in this creative, I don't know what to call it. It's not a bad place to be. It's just like an interesting place to be because I usually make art and things very kind of fast paced and kind of back to back. And I think in the past year, because I've learned so much more about what I want to do and where I want to be, it has kind of slowed me down a bit. So I've been thinking about how I want to be more intentional about doing things and the things I want to do. So I'm um, replacing volume for scale, or consistency for intensity, and it's just been interesting. So so every time that there are things that I do for myself every time it's like one of those, like, okay, now I've learned this and I want to apply it to what I want to do next. How am I going to do it? And I will be honest, sometimes that can lead to analysis paralysis and you actually just don't do anything. But I'm able to come out of those episodes, those funks, by watching things like King of Boys. So I'm like, okay, you know what? Let me watch something that is going to just set me on fire as to what is possible, what I can do, how I can build a skyscraper using Legos. And King of Boys is that for me. And there's so many things that I can talk about when it comes to King of Boys. I think, again, I've said this for a couple of things that I maybe want to do an episode where I talk about another aspect because another aspect of things that I'm working on and learning more about is funding things. And I can't imagine that a movie like King of Boys was easy to get funded because of, like, at the Nigeria of how Nigeria was when it came out, in the industry, how the industry was. It wasn't not like now where there's a Netflix Nigeria and all of those things. To get people to fund this very ambitious, creative juggernaut vision would be very tough. And I think about that now. I'm thinking about the systems at which things can operate, even publicity and promotion, the all of those things. But we're not talking about those today. That's not what we're talking about. Today we're just talking about the influence of the film itself, right? So let's get into that. So to understand what King of Boys changed, we need to understand what came before it, right? So for years, Nollywood operated under constraints, and that is not dissimilar to how other artistic industries in other places come to be. I think a lot of people, for reasons that are obvious, Hollywood is the standard of film, and it's the show of what's possible for in terms of content. Content is interesting, but art on that level, on that scale. But also, Hollywood is not a product of itself. And by that I mean, like, there's government help, there's cultural help, there's a lot of things that go into creating something like a Hollywood. And I think Hollywood, because again America is a cultural juggernaut, everybody sees what America does as the extent of which they can do something. So it's like, oh, we need a Bollywood, we need a Nollywood. In fact, the fact that we call them Bollywood and Nollywood is just so, it is what it is. You can't escape globalization, I guess. But Nollywood had a different, a very specific way it came up, because before we get to the Nollywood of 2026, we had the direct to DVD distribution model. There were very fast production cycles, tight budgets. It was just like people were using, again, Legos to make skyscrapers, but it was ours. And as a Nigerian, should I say as a Nigerian, I might actually not. This is I have to really temper some of my takes in this episode, because I didn't grow up my entire life in Nigeria. So because of that, again, I grew up can I call this my formative years? I'm definitely Nigerian, and I've lived in Nigeria for I've lived in Nigeria longer than I lived anywhere else. Okay, I'll say that. But some of it becomes obvious to me when I'm talking about things like this, and I'm recollecting events as I remember them, that some of how I feel about things and my attitude towards certain things might not be the same as people who have lived Nigeria longer than I have, or have a different ratio, right? So I do want to put a caveat before I continue in this episode and say that if I say something that you're like, that's not how I remember that, or that's not what Nigerians would say, please feel free to call me out. I promise it's not intentional. I just, again, socialization, right? So there's a way that I would perceive something as a Nigerian who has not always been in Nigeria, and someone else that will live in Nigeria their entire lives would, for sure. And I think that also adds to my appreciation for King of Boys. I think is because when King of Boys came out, I returned to Nigeria then for that was my fourth or fifth year back in Nigeria, after I'd left. And I think that because of that, I was like, it was just so, it stood out even more to me because I was like, oh, whenever I want to see something like this, because I love a drama. Come on, I love a, you don't want to mess with me, you can handle the truth. You like, I love a drama, and Nigerian movies are dramatic, can be dramatic, but not in a way sometimes that feels, that feels as refined as it could be. So you can see what maybe the actor is going for. Like, you can, when you are watching the performance, you can kind of be like, oh, I think this is what this actor is going for. And you can kind of feel that. But it's because of, again, like we've mentioned, tight budgets and budgetary constraints and fast production cycles and what they had to work with, it never quite lands. It never quite lands. Because one thing that is I love about film as a medium is that, much like everything else, but specifically in film, the greatest films are not a product of just one person, right? The greatest films and films in general are a product of collaboration. So is the director collaborating with the scriptwriter, collaborating with the editor, collaborating with the stylist, collaborating with makeup. So even like I find it so interesting that sometimes like we're like, oh, this was such a great performance, and you sometimes on Hollywood red carpets, people, they will interview the actors and be like, oh, such a great performance, that take was so funny, and the actors will be like, I'm so surprised that was the take that the director used, because I tried it 10 different ways, but the director picks this part out. Or they talk about how when they were acting, they didn't even know this was going to be used and whatever. So a great film is a work of collaboration, and because of that, every part of it is essential to getting to be excellent, right? The director, yes, is the captain of the ship that is on the helm, but you are dealing with producers who are funding things. You are dealing with the skill set of the people that are the gaffers. So gaffers are people that work on lights. You are dealing with the skill set of the sound people. There's just so much to work with in order for you to achieve or to get to a point where a film or a performance is excellent. And because of that, when you have tight budgets and fast production cycles and all these adversaries that early Nollywood had to work against, sometimes things don't land like they should, right? The acting might be great, but maybe the costuming is bad, or the acting might be great, or maybe the director is not using the right shot for that scene, and then it just takes away from it. Because again, like, if you want just like a film 101, if you are trying to capture a dramatic performance where someone is giving like a soliloquy or a monologue or what things of that nature, you usually want a close-up shot, like a tight shot of their face, so we can really read into the emotions that they are delivering. But if you only have one camera or you only have two cameras, right, and both of them are stationary, so now you are showing us the entire scene, we are seeing everything that's going on in the background, and there's all of this going on in the background, so we can't focus on the motiveness of the scene. So the actor might be giving a great performance, but because there's so much that we're seeing that we should not be seeing, and we can't focus on that performance, it doesn't land, right? So even in terms of costuming was practical, cinematography had to serve the narrative. When I think about early Nollywood cinematography, the thing that comes to my mind is when is the sitcom transition. So whenever they want to show you a new scene or show you that you're in a different place, they will do an outdoor shot of if the hospital, and then they'll bring you inside the hospital. And when they want to go back to the grandma's house, an outside shot of the grandma's house inside the grandma's house. And then there's some Nollywood films, I think on YouTube Nollywood now, more than top tier Nollywood films or streaming Nollywood films, is the entire plot of the entire movie happens in one house. So you never get to go outside. Nothing happens. Like, everything that happens outside, you are told about inside. Again, these are things that I'm not saying this to make fun of them. These are things that happen because of budget constraints, skill, know-how, technicality, and all of those things, right? So everything that was happening before in early Nollywood, I should say, was just to serve the narrative. It was a bunch of people that liked acting, liked filmmaking, liked editing, that wanted to make something, and they made very iconic things. There are a lot of examples, but some of my favorite, or one Nollywood film that I think stands out to me, was Blood Sisters, which was Omotola, Jalene Kende, and Genevieve Nanji. Like, that one stood out to me. And I'm a Yoruba boy, so the culture of everything is so different now, because even back then, like, if you wanted to watch a really good movie, like, you had to go rent it at like this movie house place, and then everybody came around to watch it. And then if it was like a movie that we knew was coming out, like I remember when Ejiowuro, that's like a Yoruba film, came out, um we had to like go rent it out. And because we we foresaw that, um what do you call them? The power holding company of Nigeria might take away electricity. You also will go and buy fuel, so that like in case the movie stops, we can like get back into it. Like, this is too good. And they were still riveting performances, still riveting stories. And I think because the audience didn't really know better, obviously we were seeing American films, but we just were not expecting Nollywood films to be on the same level as American films, right? So we were like, these are our stories. They talk like us, they sound like us, they look like us, and the audience accepted it. So all of the different poles that make a film existed in early Nollywood, but they served a very functionary role, and they rarely elevated the role. Like, I was giving an example of the sitcom transition, where like we are going to the hospital, we show the outside of the hospital first, then we show inside of the hospital. As time progressed, people started to write more interesting screenplays, because a script is not in itself a screenplay, right? You want a screenplay the screenplay would have more details as to how things will flow in the movie. And we can say that, okay, we're in a hospital now, but instead of just going from hospital to the house, it can be like a walking transition. So the character walks into one door and walks into the other door. Less of one of the tropes of early Nollywood as well was flashback scenes. Flashback scenes, again, to give context. Again, if I'm laughing, it's not to make fun of it, just to give context as to how things started, right? And eventually, as time would go on, people would travel out of the country and go to film school. People would get money to buy more equipment and things of that nature. Things start to change, right? I don't want the takeaway from this episode to be like Kemi Adetiba came and she elevated all of Nollywood. That would not be true, because I think before we go further, we need to be very careful about something. King of Boys did not appear out of nowhere. King of Boys itself stands on the shoulders of Nollywood's evolution. Nollywood had already been evolving, already stretching, already experimenting with scale, structure, and visual ambition. And I want to give credit to films like The Figurine by Kunle Afolayan, because that, I feel like a lot of people would say that movie started the pushing of cinematic storytelling in Nigeria towards a more deliberate visual language. October 1 is another movie that's deepening that approach. So more controlled pacing. Pacing is so important in films. Sometimes I watch a film, and I think you can always kind of tell what the budget of a film is by a lot of things, but pacing essentially. Because if you have, okay, I should be careful with this, because there are really high budget films that have problem with pacing as well, right? So maybe pacing is not the best example, but for people that are listening, pacing is just the speed at which a story is being told. So usually, a movie or a film is divided into, I would say like 3 acts, usually 3 acts. If you're talking about a 1 hour, 30 minutes runtime, usually 3 acts. And by the second act, the hope is that we know what the conflict of the film is, right? We know what is this film about, essentially. Because let's talk about conflict a little bit, because we'll come out to talking about conflict. Conflict in a movie is very important, because it is where the audience decides how they're going to place their stakes, right? So is this movie about this high school choir trying to win the the national choir competition, or is the conflict about their teacher failing marriage? Now, caveat or comma, a movie has the ability to hold more than one conflict. Absolutely. In fact, there's something called the A plot, the B plot, and sometimes the C plot. So with the A plot, we are usually using like the main characters of that film. The main characters of the films are in the A plot, and that is the main general conflict. But then we have side characters and side plots as well that are supposed to be in service of the a plot conflict, right? So the high school choir is going to regionals and they need to win the regional competition. However, this is harder for them to accomplish because their teacher's marriage is failing, so he's showing up less at school at their rehearsals. The lead of the choir is having personal problems with her voice and insecurities and is getting bullied, so it's going to affect. But you see how those plots are advancing the main plot, right? So when there's a pacing problem is sometimes when we spend too much time on the complementary plot, and it's like, wait, what is this movie about? Like, this is not the fourth scene about this man's marriage. I thought the movie was about the choir winning the competition, so pacing can be an issue. And I took back my example of early Nollywood and pacing, because I've watched recent blockbusters, Hollywood $1,000 billion budget, where those stories have had problems with pacing as well. So pacing is not always a budget issue, so I take that back. But October 1, back to, again, it's called losing the plot. You got to stay with me, okay? I was talking about October 1, the Nigerian film, one of the Nigerian films that elevated Nollywood's approach and Nollywood's, what was possible to make it a Nollywood film, right? So October 1 had more controlled pacing, stronger atmosphere, a clearer sense of tone as well. Tone in terms of, am I watching a comedy? Am I watching a drama? Am I watching a dramedy? Am I watching a social commentary film? Like, tone is also very important in, again, driving home what the internal conflict is, and all of the things that service all the different parts of the story. And this happens in script writing and in storyboarding, right? All of the different things that are happening story-wise are supposed to serve the main conflict, so that when we get to act 3 of the film or the movie, the audience receives the payoff. It feels like, okay, I get why this moment here is something that I should cry about, something that I should laugh about, something that I should take as a lesson. Because sometimes what happens with films, and this happens with films of all budget and all works as well, is that we don't spend enough time building the conflict and building the tension of the conflict. So when sometimes it's like when you're watching a movie and they randomly have a sex scene and you're like, now why, what? It's like, wait, when, like, when did this happen? like did I miss something? Or when you're watching a movie and somebody out of nowhere, someone's giving a dramatic monologue about what they've been going through and they start crying, and you're like, I know this is sad and I'm supposed to be sad in this moment, but I don't know how I got here, or I don't feel invested enough to be taking on the emotion that this person is trying to put down for me, right? Anyways, and there was also 76. 76 also expanded historical storytelling with a level of production detail that signaled growing ambition. So with 76, and I think with Kunle Afolayan in general, Kunle Afolayan is another goated Nigerian director that deserves, his turns, is that one of there's a before Kunle Afolayan and after Kunle Afolayan, and I mean that in regards to Nigerian historical dramas. So now, let me tell you something. If Nollywood has something, it's historical dramas. It's stories about the olden day times in villages and legends. And I'm not saying that as a bad thing, I'm just saying that, like, that's the way Kemi is to film noir in Nollywood, as Kunle is to historical dramas and things of that nature. And Kemi Adetiba is also very interesting to me because before taking on and conquering King of Boys, she had done something commercially dominant before, which is The Wedding Party. Right. So The Wedding Party is so interesting because The Wedding Party does 2 things that I think are important. The first is that The Wedding Party takes a lot of the established Hollywood tropes of a romantic comedy and is able to authentically translate it into a Nigerian context. I think the most outlandish part of The Wedding Party, honestly, has to be the scene where Banky goes to meet Adesuwa's character and she's like by the beach and there's a fire. Like it's a bit ridiculous. It's like it's a part of the film where I'm like, okay, let's reel this in a little bit. But that is a very Hollywood thing to happen. That the way The Wedding Party plays out, this, you can tell that she and whoever worked on the story with her had really studied American romantic comedies, because the Wedding Party is such a play for play mastering of that genre. And some of the tropes that they use in it, some of the conflict tropes, the comedy tropes, they are if you've watched what's the Julia Roberts movie? Oh my gosh, why can't I remember anything today? My best friend's wedding, Father of the Bride. One of those two or both of them, like, they have just in terms of romantic comedy wedding tropes, Wedding Party really owned that. But what made it extra special was that it was so Nigerian as well. There were some things that were happened in Wedding Party, just trope wise, that were just so Nigerian. So it really merged. Like, it was a great watch because of that. It was funny, it was dramatic, it was there was a bit of scale in Wedding Party as well. Like, thinking about the budget to put something together, like put something like that together, very great. As well as the second thing I was about Wedding Party that was important to Kemi Adetiba's trajectory. So the first one is that she's able to figure out an existing genre that is not. I won't say that romantic comedies stories are not popular in Nigerian zeitgeist, but in the way that it was done in Wedding Party was very specific. And the second thing is that she was able to take an established Nollywood legend and give them kind of like a second phase of their career. The Sola Sobowale of King of Boys is very important to how King of Boys exists, right? And I think we are reintroduced to Sola Sobowale as an actress with the Wedding Party, which she gives a very, I think she gives a very Sola Sobowale standard performance in the Wedding Party. It's not, it's a great performance. I think for a lot of people, they left the Wedding Party with Sola Sobowale on their lips. Like, it was a scene-stealing, career-reviving role for her. And why that's important is because I think before then, and this is where I could be wrong. So if I ain't right, y'all can call me out. Before then, there had been such a focus on introducing new acts in Nollywood, which is not an insane thing, right? Like, it's a moving genre. It's a moving genre. The industry is evolving. We need new voices. We need new talents to be able to do these new things with these new equipment and things. But after Wedding Party, and I would say King of Boys, there's also been a resurgence in bringing in our more iconic, legendary direct DVD Nollywood actors and putting them on the screen, and that accomplishes a lot of things on a lot of levels. The first one is the nostalgia. Let's just get that out of the way. We are watching a movie, you are seeing Toyin Tomato on your screen, like, oh my god, this is Sola Sobowale, look at her now. Like everybody loves a return story, and especially when you see them now being able to take all those chops they learned and have it done in front of a more professional, higher budget level scale. It's just nostalgic and it's great. The second thing is the skill set. There is just a skill set from that generation of actors that when they come back for their revival era and they're now doing it on this big scale, it's just very palpable. One scene I think of a lot, one of my favorite scenes in King of Boys that I think about often, is the scene where Sola Sobowale's character and Reminisce's character are going to go they're about to go to war, essentially. And Sola Sobowale goes to her pastor. I would call him a pastor. I don't know, a religious man in white. And Reminisce's character goes to his babalawo, which is native doctor or voodoo doctor for those that don't have a Nigerian context. And that is such a great scene to me, because it reminds me of the scene in The Godfather where, that's how I know Kemi does her homework. There's a scene in The Godfather where they send out a hit on all of the Godfather's enemies, and the way it's told visually in the movie is that while people are getting killed, somebody's child is getting baptized, right? And it's just that just a position of somebody's coming into life and people are dying. And in King of Boys, Kemi does this thing where, like, you see both characters go to their spiritual sources, and it's just the music, the artistry of it is so great. It's so riveting because you know that it lets you know that something is about to happen. Like it just rouses you up in that way. And one of the reasons why that scene stands out to me is because there's a part where the reminiscence Babalawo native doctor cuts off the head of a chicken. Was it a chicken? I think it was a chicken. He cuts off the head of a chicken and he pours it on Reminisce. And then on the other side, Sola Sobowale is praying with her spiritual guide, pastor person, and some other women. And there's a part where she starts rolling in the sand. It's just visually, it's so striking. Like that level of, and I'm talking about Sola Sobowale's performance now. That level of commitment to the craft, like that level of getting lost in the craft, is so riveting on stage. It's very theatrical, but in this context it works on so many levels, right? So having established Nollywood actors come to the front of your movies became a thing that we started to see more and more of post Wedding Party, but also post King of Boys. So this is important because with the Wedding Party and 76 and October 1 and the Figurine, can tell that the industry was already moving forward. I want to give honorable mention to Isoken. Isoken is a movie, it's a romantic comedy that Dakore Egbesin stars in. And I think about that as also one of those movies that was doing different things. I think Isoken and Okafor's Law are two Nollywood films I think about as well that are doing different things, trying different things, but also showing that Nollywood is elevating in terms of storytelling, in terms of screenplay and all of those things, right? So the industry was already moving forward and already evolving and already building towards something bigger. So King of Boys did not invent ambition, but what Kemi did with King of Boys was that she concentrated it. She said, you know what? We're already going up and up. Like things are getting better. The camera quality is getting better. The actors are getting better. All this is getting better, but let us now take this and scale it. Let us take it and go even crazy, because King of Boys is not what makes it feel big or bigger. Is not just the budget; it's the intention. Because Nollywood has already been evolving, so the ambition is what allowed that to take it to the next level. Is what allowed it to become, it's become the iconic piece of cinema that we know today. Right? So let's talk about scale. Let's talk about scale with King of Boys. So Kemi Adetiba with King of Boys, everything feels immediately different because the film doesn't just tell a story about power. It looks like power. One of my favorites, whenever I think about, I'm working on something now, mood boarding something now, and whenever I think about lighting, like the light in a film, Kemi Adetiba still has some of my favorite references for lighting. If you've noticed, in Nollywood films now, especially the high budget streaming ones, they always have colored lighting in the most unnatural of scenes. There's always, and again, if somebody can prove me wrong, please prove me wrong, but I don't remember seeing as much colored light in Nollywood films as I started to see post King of Boys. Like that dramatic, they can be in a cave and there'll be red lights. That lighting style, I believe, originated with King of Boys. If somebody wants to prove me wrong, please go ahead and do it. But I don't remember seeing that onto King of Boys. And in King of Boys, it works because the color palette is controlled, right? There's a lot of reds, golds, shadows. Every frame feels designed, not just captured, right? It wasn't just something that they just did to do. Whenever you see Eniola and she's in an angry whatever mood, it's red and it's dim and it's almost hard to see. And then when we are back into the world, when things are colorful, a lot of the color palette is so controlled. And another thing that I love with King of Boys is costuming. The costuming in King of Boys, especially, I know I'm talking about King of Boys the movie, but King of Boys the series, the costuming there is so effective to me. One thing that I love that Kemi Adetiba does is how she introduces characters to the storyline. Two of my favorite character introductions that she does. The first one is in King of Boys. I'm talking about King of Boys the series now. When Eniola comes, the first time that we see her, not the first time that we see her, but the first time that the public sees her. So in King of Boys the series, It takes place a while after Eniola has gone back to has fled Nigeria, and when she flees Nigeria, she has this moment of emotional internal reckoning, and she's so sad about her children and whatever. And she's like, she whips herself, I think, with pepper, and so she's like having this quiet moment in her own apartment in wherever in the world she is, as she's sad and she's whatever. But then when she comes back to Nigeria, she comes back to Nigeria from a in a plane, an aircraft of some sort. And when she comes out, she's in this all white outfit. It it is so memorable because it's like you're thinking about this from a story perspective, right? This character that is evil and whatever has gone away, and she has had a moment of emotional reckoning, and now she's coming back in all white, and she does the press conference. Like, the entire thing is just so memorable because it connects to the story. Now they could have had they could have had her dressed in anything, like you could have been in like colorful clothing or whatever, but that wouldn't communicate the theme of why she's returning. She's coming back to reinvent herself. She's coming back to change her moral compass, and an all white outfit makes sense. My second favorite introduction that Kemi does, and again, this is not in King of Boys the movie, it's King of Boys the series, so sorry for that, but just there are great introductions in King of Boys the movie for sure, but I want to use the series one because I feel like those ones are just, they just get to it better. There's a governor's wife. It's played by, oh, what's her name? There's in King of Boys the series. There's the governor's wife is played by Etim. Why can't I remember anybody's name today, you guys? I think because I'm a little under the weather. So I've just been. You can probably hear it in my voice as well that I'm just a little bit under the weather. But I still showed up for you guys because I love you and I want you to stay. I want you to stay as culturally updated, because what would you guys do without me, truly? Unse Ikpe Etim, Jumoke Rando, Unse Ikpe Etim. Now, Jumoke Rando's introduction is also iconic to me because we first see her, I think the first thing we see from her, she's in the car, she's driving to her husband's office, we see a red lip. Then we see like the top of her brows, like we don't see her face, and this is just to signal to us that this is going to be an important character, but also this is an important dynamic character. And in the first time that we see a full shot of her top to bottom, she's in this red dress, and it's just stunning. It's just absolutely stunning because it's like this is going to be an important character, and this is the best way to introduce them. So she has really mastered the act of introducing characters to the best of our knowledge and showing us how to receive them. Because when you introduce a character like that, you are telling us that this is going to be an important person, and please pay attention to them, right? That's also very important. Okay, let's move on a little bit more now to, sorry guys, again, a little sick today. So we've talked about scale with Kemi and lighting and also costuming. But the last thing I want to say about it is that when it comes to great films, if you're someone that studies films, you know that authority is communicated visually before a single line is spoken. So the reason why I'm talking about the lighting and the costuming and why this is important to storytelling of King of Boys is because before Eniola says a word, you know that she's in control, and before our victims also say a word, you do the costuming and the outfit, and sometimes cultural context is also very important. I think about that. The first scene of King of Boys is how I knew I was going to be in for a good time when I was watching it. That first scene is just so masterful. It works on so many levels. In the first scene, we see that she's a socialite. We see that she has haters. Kemi is able to introduce Eniola's dubious origins without her telling us. So she tells us about Eniola's dubious origins by using the characters in the movie. So it is through them that we know that Eniola has dubious origins, right? Okay, so let's move on to the concept of King of Boys. The real shift in the real shift that Kemi brings to the forefront with the real shift that she brings to the forefront with King of Boys is the shift of the concept. The real shift is not just the visual language, is the concept. Before King of Boys, power in Nollywood was often portrayed as a narrative. So something characters had, something they fought for. But in King of Boys, power is performance. It's this theatrical, it's operatic, it's deliberate. The way everything is set from the table to the, again, we talk about the light and the costuming, the room feels heavier. Conversations, they feel staged in a theatrical way, and the tension is not just written, it is constructed, and it changes how the audience engages, because now you're not just watching power, you're experiencing it. And back to that first scene when Eniola, there's somebody, she's at a birthday party, and then they have found this guy that betrayed her at the birthday party, and then she's dressed in a, in a Yoruba woman best, a Yoruba woman attire, and yet she's still able to carry out her job as this matriarch that is just on the loose, right? So that signals to us that she is in control. It signals to us that she's powerful, that she's in the moment, and she's really taking the bulls by the horn, right? So we're experiencing the power, not just being told about it. We can also watch it as the audience. So I've talked about Sola Sobowale's importance to King of Boys, but I will say that at the center of it is not just her. It's not just the character of Eniola Salami. It's what Sola Sobowale herself brings to Eniola Salami. Because when I think about it, there are a great number of people that Kemi could have picked to portray Eniola Salami. Actually, let me stop there. Before I go on, I want to talk about the importance of Eniola Salami as a character. So usually in a movie like this, even in the West, the protagonist would be male. When you're thinking about gangster movies and you're thinking about people that run the town and run the city, you're thinking about, usually the person that will be portrayed is a man. The Godfather being a prime example of this. You are thinking about a man. You're thinking about a man, maybe a younger man or an older man if he's a don. But the center of all of this is Eniola Salami. And this is where the film becomes truly disruptive, because Nollywood, like many film industries, has historically centered certain types of protagonists. Young men are usually the protagonists. And that's predictable. But with this movie, Kemi showed that a woman can take on a strong role and she can be powerful in it, right? King of Boys does something different in building its entire world around an older woman. Not just a side character, not as a support, but as the axis of power. So she's not just present, she's dominant, she's complex, she's contradictory, she's dangerous, she's commanding. It's not just representation, it is also inclusion, and it's a representation as authority. And that shift matters, because I've mentioned before that the importance of a post wedding party and post King of Boys, where we see older Nollywood actors come to the forefront, but bringing Sola Sobowale as the lead of this is also very important. It expands what the audience believes is possible, and that's something that we'll continue to see, is more women-fronted leads in more complex roles. So I'm thinking about the fact that Eniola Salami was also a mother, and how being a mother was central to what made her so complex. Like, there are this bad woman who is killing people and doing all those things with politicians, but when it comes to her kids, she can't win. And there's one really cute scene where our kids are fighting and she's like trying to go after, and she's so frustrated in the most motherly way can be frustrated. And then in the very next scene, she goes back to being the axis of power. So having not just Sola Sobowale, but Eniola Salami be a woman, be an older woman, is also very groundbreaking to what Kemi did, what the impact and the influence of King of Boys is. So let's slow down a little bit. I feel like we've been running a little bit. So let's talk. I want to talk about the cinematic language of King of Boys now, because what Kemi Adetiba introduced was not just scale; it was language. I've talked earlier about how lighting becomes narrative, color becomes emotion, costumes become psychology, and I thought before about how Kemi is also goated because you can tell that she's a student of film, like she studies film, because the film borrows from global cinematic traditions, much like the wedding party borrowed from American romantic comedies, especially in the wedding genre. King of Boys borrows from iconic crime dramas, political thrillers, even theatrical staging. But again, it grounds them in Nigerian context. And that's the power of a Kemi Adetiba story. Even to Kill a Monkey, right? It's taking these tropes and these plot devices that already exist and grounding them in a Nigerian context, which creates something rare. So the film is able to feel both local and expansive at the same time, still very familiar but elevated. Now, moving on to another legacy of the King of Boys is the Marvel Cinematic Universe of it all. Or just say Marvel Cinematic Universe or the sequel universe that we all live in right now, which is like when something is successful, the studio find a way to either make a part 2 or make it into a series. With King of Boys, like I mentioned earlier, the impact did not stop with the original film. In 2021, King of Boys, The Return of the King expands the world of the movie. And this is important because it really shows that the story was not just successful, it was scalable. It was a narrative that could hold more complexity, more time, more depth, which aligns with something we've discussed before. When an idea is strong enough, it can become infrastructure. And my only main gripe with King of Boys, The Return of the King, is, spoiler alert, is that they bring back Reminiscence's character. I think what I would have wanted was a new villain. This is just like a me thing. I don't enjoy when we resurrect characters that died. I just, like I don't enjoy. It's not my favorite thing also because I thought, and as well because I thought Charlie Boy was sufficient enough of a villain. I don't my only critique of the series was like I really wish Reminiscence had stayed dead. But that's neither here nor there. So after King of Boys, right, we see something shift in Nollywood, right? We begin to see more political dramas, darker tones, higher production ambition, more attention to visual identity. Filmmakers begin pushing further, not just telling stories, but also designing them. And once an industry like Nollywood sees what is possible, it cannot really unsee it. But there's another side of this, right? There's the risk of elevation, because raising the bar creates pressure. Higher expectations, higher budgets, higher stakes, and not every film can operate at the level at this level, and not every story needs to, right? I've talked about this before. I don't know if on the podcast or just to one of my friends, that we really need space for all types of content and all types of excuse me. We need space for all types of different storytelling. Not every movie needs to be on Netflix. Hello? Can y'all hear me? I said not every movie needs to be on Netflix. Not every movie needs to be a theatrical release. Some movies are on YouTube, and that's fine. Some stories just need to be on YouTube. Some stories just need to be on TikTok. Hey. We really need, not everybody wants to watch a political thriller, that's a psychological dance. Some people just want to sit down, rewind, and have a good time, and that should be okay. And also, we have to realize that if we start making every movie to a certain level and a certain ceiling, we are robbing upcoming filmmakers and upcoming artists the chance to explore and create something new. Somebody needs to be making movies on YouTube. Somebody needs to be making movies for TikTok people, so that they can get their reps in terms of what they can do and how they even relate with the material, relate with the instruments and all the equipment that they have. We need smaller films, is what I'm saying. There should be space for smaller films, even at the high Hollywood budget Nollywood level, right? Even at the level of big actors and big directors should be able to make smaller films that tell a story and give people opportunity to rise to the occasion and share that surprise us, right? which brings me back to the core idea of this episode. Some work succeed, others redefine. And I think King of Boys did both. It succeeded commercially, but more importantly, it shifted imagination. And once imagination shifts, industries flow. So there are a couple of things I want to talk about before I wrap things up today. I'm sorry about the many interruptions that might have happened for your listening experience today. Today's just one of those days where it feels like everybody and everything's working against me. But we persist still. The runtime of King of Boys, I want to talk about that as well. So I was working in marketing industry in Nigeria when King of Boys came out. And I remember one of my colleagues went to see the director's cut of King of Boys before it was released theatrically. And I remember she telling me that it was over 3 hours. And after she had sung it, oh, Jesus. Whoa. After she had seen the theatrical release, she said that, believe it or not, what we saw in the theater was the cut down version of what she saw in the private screening. So the movie is really long. It runs for over 3 hours. And I think that decision alone is disruptive because Nollywood has historically been shaped by speed. I talked about pacing issues before. What I was talking about in earlier Nollywood films, we get to the conflict so quickly without any context of the characters or what they are going through that can make the context of the conflict feel even more singular. So faster production and shorter run times, efficient storytelling was what Nollywood was running on. But King of Boys refuses efficiency. It chooses expansion. It takes its time. It lingers. It allows the characters to breathe, to evolve, to contradict themselves. And that matters because runtime is not just about length. It's about confidence. It's a statement that says this story deserves space. Now, do I believe that some of the action scenes could have been cut short a little bit? Absolutely. But to the point of this being a movie that's going to change how people make movies going after it, I think it's okay that it's so long because it shows you that, hey, if your story needs to breathe, let it breathe. Let's get to know these characters. Let's get to walk with them. And King of Boys also follows such a trajectory of events. Like there are so many things that happen in that one movie that it makes sense that it's so long. And like every great film, every great movie, every great film, there are moments. And the moments that the film makes is what is going to make it live after the credits roll in the mind of the audience. So there are moments, and one of the moments I think, like, because moments is what makes King of Boys unforgettable, not just the scale, is the execution inside specific scene. So with Reminisce, I think Reminisce was such an amazing find for the King of Boys film because I don't think anybody was expecting such a brazen, thorough performance from him. Reminisce is a rapper. I don't think I could be wrong, but I don't think he had any previous acting credits to his name before King of Boys. But he was so controlled, measured. There was a student to his performance that made his character feel dangerous. It wasn't loud. It wasn't exaggerated. It was deliberate. And especially in scenes that he shared with Sola Sobowale, you can feel the tension before anything happens. And they were just really great scene partners. And that kind of restraint is so cinematic. Another amazing performance from King of Boys to me is Adetiba's performance. She just, I mean, I think of Adetiba as one of the great Nollywood actors, and her performance here just operates in just a layered, emotional and strategic way. Because I think for Adetiba, up until that point, mind you, Adetiba and Sola Sobowale had played mother and daughter in the wedding party, which I think is cute. But Adetiba is probably more used to being a lead character in things that she's done previously. Because in the time when King of Boys came out, there was really no higher ceiling than Adetiba Itomi Wellington in the Nigerian Nollywood zeitgeist. But she's such a great supporting character as well. Like, she really showed that she can also be a great supporting character. She navigates vulnerability and connection at the same time. And what's important to me is that she doesn't feel like she's a great supporting character, but she still feels like she's lived in the world that she operates in. Her motivations, her trajectory, they add depth to the film's power structure, because now power in movie is not just centralized, it is contested, it's shifting, it's unstable. right? So I think Adesoa was also my favorite performance from that movie. Adesoa, Reminisce, and of course Sola Sobowale, just a masterclass in acting. Okay, as we wrap up here, oh, I want to talk about the controversy of King of Boys a little bit. If you can call it a controversy, is that King of Boys ushered in an era of glorification of gangs. Um, hmm, I don't know. I don't know. It's such an interesting um, it's such an interesting critique, because the critique is that the film shows wealth, power, and luxury alongside violence and moral decay. And obviously, things like where money is hidden in coffins, power is tied to bloodshed. I don't think the film is glamorizing violence or power. I think it's exposing the cost of it. And also, some of the things that Kemi uses as story plots, story pl- technical story devices in this movie are things that, like, Nigerians know of corruption in Nigeria. So it's more of like being, I guess, one of the first people to say this is what's happening in our world that we live in. This is how our world works. And this ties again back to Eniola Salami being a woman, because she's also able to show that Eniola is a contraction of the system. She exists in a male dominated power structure, and she's succeeding using the same violent, corrupt tools. But even at that, she's still treated differently because she's a woman. So there are a lot of dimensions to the world of gang violence, and Eniola's persona as a woman in it. Showing that the system doesn't really reject corruption; it rejects who's allowed to be corrupt. So I think to say that it glamorizes violence is might be a bit of a simpleton take. I think it critiques it in a very honest and very memorable way. I had a fun thing about King of Boys that I love, and I love this about some of my favorite movies. One of the reasons why I love Isare's Insecure. Insecure is not a movie; it's a TV series. But one of the things I love about Insecure is that Insecure makes Los Angeles a character. Right? In King of Boys, Lagos is not just a setting; it is also a character. So you get to see the duality of wealth versus poverty, elite versus streets, politics versus crime. The film is not just about individuals, it's about a city structured by contradiction. And because of that, if you've lived in Lagos, if you're Nigerian, you probably have a sense of what Lagos is like. I think King of Boys does a really good job in portraying that and making Lagos itself to be a character in the film and not just a setting where the movie happens. Okay, I have so much more to say, you guys. But I think we might do, for the first time, for real this time, I think I might do a part two to this, where I continue talking about King of Boys. I feel like there's so much to say about it. There's so much more I like to get into. But I do want to let you go. And yeah, I think we'll do a part two for the first time in this in the history of this podcast. We'll do a part two where so I'm able to talk a bit more about some of my favorite themes that I loved from King of Boys, right? So how this connects to everything that we've been building so far. In season one, we explored how systems shape music, and I think that this is a perfect example of how an artist can shape a genre by just being true to themselves. So I want to leave you with something to think about today. What was the first Nollywood film that made you feel like this looks different? Let's just think about that. Um, because I think that moment matters. It's the moment where expectations begin to shift. And if this episode made you see King of Boys differently, share with someone who still thinks it was just another Nollywood hit. And yeah, I can't wait to dive deeper into this in the next episode. So next episode will be a continuation of this one. And we're going into cultures, into systems, into the moments that change everything. But until next time, I will not leave you without telling you that greatness isn't a movement. It's maintenance. As long as you're still practicing, you're still progressing, and progress never loses. Stay crowned, you guys. Goodbye.